HHTV. You may begin.
Well, good morning and welcome to Fireside Chat. We had really hoped that this was going to be a live event where we could have lots of folks in Anderson Hall and also be able to stream it, but we didn't feel like we could get the critical mass into Anderson Hall in order to do a live show because we're not really allowed to be able to aggregate that many people. So we're hoping that that is going to happen for our July Fireside Chat. We are waiting for the governor to make some announcements on June 29th and for the Department of Health to interpret those as it relates to our living community regarding visitation, regarding how many people can be aggregated in a room safely. So we need a little bit more guidance from the Department of Health before we kind of open things up more broadly. But we are cautiously optimistic that the governor and Department of Health are going to be more accommodating in the next week or so, and that will then lead to having a in-person fireside chat in July. So let's cross our fingers for that. As usual, we've got a busy schedule for today. We're going to, I'll have a few opening comments I want to make. We're going to talk a little bit about community safety and security updates, and Brian will cover that. And he's also going to talk a little bit about the hot weekend we're coming up against, so we're prepared for that. It's never a bad time to start talking about cybersecurity. We have lots of issues now that we're seeing nationally and personally that we need to pay attention to, and Brian Levitt's going to give us some tips on that. We'll have some updates from philanthropy from Doris and Herb. Of course, the resident council update and picnic plans for the summer. And of course, new residents. That, of course, is a bright spot for all of us when we see more people wanting to join Horizon House and enjoy what we all enjoy. Some new hires and transfers, and then I'll have some wrap up at the end, and we'll make sure that we leave some time for questions. So before we get into the core of the agenda, I wanted to touch on a couple of things. And one is to talk a little bit about our staff vaccination. You know, we have vaccinated now up to 78% of people, staff, are fully vaccinated. And we have even more that, when you add on to that, who've had their first vaccination. Our goal is to get to September and have as high a percentage as possible of staff vaccinations. And it's interesting because we are kind of a little bit of a leader in this. Our peer group communities are not making the big jump towards mandatory vaccinations. We have decided to do that. We take a little bit of risk in that it could affect our staffing. And that came up in our bond call with Ziegler. Each year, you know, we're a bond, we have bonds outstanding to the public. And each year we do a bond call with our bondholders. And these are institutional funds around the country that have invested in Horizon House. And one of the questions that came up in that call with Christy and me was, what was our vaccination rate, as well as were we having a mandatory policy? And we look at the mandatory policy as being a safe idea for us and one we think makes sense. And the bondholders were nervous that that might mean that we might have trouble hiring staff if we are the only community that is choosing to take that aggressive policy. And our response back was, well, we feel it's really important. We want to be keeping our residents as safe and secure as possible. We feel this is important. And then if we found that this became a hiring challenge in the future, then we would have to kind of rethink things. But at this point, we feel like being out front with a mandatory vaccination policy is the right thing. But it's interesting that it did get to the level of our bondholders to ask that question. As I mentioned, you know, we got a hot weekend coming up. Brian Holtz is going to cover some things that we should be doing procedurally so you can all stay as cool and safe as possible and not become dehydrated. We have special connections going out to our most vulnerable people, both not only in assisted living, but within our independent living community, to make sure we've got close tabs on people so they're staying hydrated and cool and not overheating in this one of rare weekends when we have super hot weather. I want to make a comment about alert notices. I know that sometimes there's been some errors in what appears in the alert and when the actual event happens. And in fairness, sometimes we make an error and don't get everything listed properly. But sometimes the events actually change from when the alert was published. And we've seen that a number of times, and therefore people read the alert and they have an idea when something's going to happen and find out it's different. It may not necessarily be associated with incorrectly putting it in the alert. It may just simply be that things did change. So some of our digital signage tends to be more up to date. So sometimes it's important to kind of check that to be sure that your event is happening when you expect it. We had last week Mithun, our architects, in to kind of do a little introduction to their planning process for some of our remodel. Some people were looking for a little bit more and wanted to know, hey, where's the meat and what are you going to tell us about what's happening around here? And we certainly plan to do that. That meeting was to introduce people to Mithun who might otherwise not know how they think, what they've done, how they go about stuff, and what kind of work they've done. So it was informative to some folks and maybe not so to others. When we get to the fall, we'll be having much more engagement with our residents about the choices that we're making for some ideas for improvement in our campus. And there'll be lots of opportunity for residents to chime in and say what they like and don't care for and so on. Some of you may have noticed if you were watching that Mithun on the live streaming via YouTube, that it did have fits and starts. And people say, hey, you know, gosh, it wasn't really ready for prime time. Well, one of the challenges we have in technology is with YouTube. YouTube, when we live stream, doesn't always spool 100% of that video. So you will see stops and starts, and that is a function of YouTube, not us. When we download that YouTube and then replay it in one complete file, then it does come across as being perfectly fluent all the way through the presentation. So sometimes when you're watching YouTube, you can get interruptions, but that's not our technology. That is really about how YouTube is set up. Let's see, and then last thing I want to make a comment on as far as some of the things that we put on to HHTV. A number of residents have said, hey, you know, the movie got in late, or it didn't start, or it interrupted. We have a system that requires us to follow a very strict protocol, and if we miss a step or we're slightly delayed, it can goof up the presentation of that movie. So we've got to get a little bit more dialed in to make sure we don't miss those checkoffs. The other thing is that the movies that we show are often from residents who are loaning us their DVD of a movie, and they have to be really clean and not scratched. Our DVD system is very sensitive to a scratch. So if we get a disc that has a scratch in it, it could throw that movie off kilter, and then all of a sudden your screen goes blank or you get a bunch of gyration. So when you are offering up your videos for us to replay for the broader audience, make sure you're giving us a super high quality disc that doesn't have a lot of scratches. Otherwise the presentation won't look as we want. So with that, just want to remind everyone that if you do want to ask questions, you know, type it in the chat, raise your hand on the video. If you're watching YouTube or HHTV 370, then email your questions to Risa at horizonhouse.org or to Lacey K at horizonhouse.org. And then we will pick those up at the end of our chat and make sure that we're answering those questions. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Brian Holtz to talk about some of the community safety and safety updates for today. Brian?
Thank you, Mike. And before I jump into what I have on the agenda, just one thing to mention that something you may see in University Garage, it's pretty visible, is that Anderson Construction, who is an important collaborator with us on projects, are putting up some walls for them to have some storage area and lay down for their material in the University Garage. So if you happen to go by that area, that is walls that they're putting up that we're collaborating with them to have a space to be able to do their work and to be efficient in having an area to put their materials as they get delivered. So if you've been seeing the weather forecast or the news, there is a lot of energy about what's going to happen with our weather coming up specifically today through Monday. And we are on an excessive heat watch. And so we just wanted to touch base on this to make sure that everybody is reminded about some steps that we all can take for ourselves to try and stay cool. So the recommendation is to stay in an air-conditioned space as much as possible. And we ask that you keep your windows closed so you're not letting that hot air from the outside come into your space or into other portions of the building. And to have your windows covers, blinds closed if they get direct sun, be it in the morning, in the afternoon, to try to keep your apartment cool. And working with food and beverage, they will be able to provide you a bag of ice if you need it, if you come down to the bistro, and if you already have a meal delivered from food and beverage, they can bring you an ice bag if you request it at the time when you place your order. Also, it's really important for us all to stay hydrated and drink plenty of water. Food and beverage has a new dispenser in the Fireside Lounge area that they have set up for you. And of course, up in the lobby, there's a water fountain up there. And at certain times of day, we'll have a pitcher of water up there in the lobby too. So be sure to drink plenty of water. And we typically, when the temperatures are getting to this level, we want to avoid caffeine or alcohol or other things that are very sugary, because those can dehydrate our body. And so it's good for us to keep, a beverage with us as we're going through the day, just to keep sipping on it and stay hydrated. Now, if you do elect to go outside, recommendations is to, on these excessive hot days, to try to find shade and stay directly out of the heat of the sunlight. And try not to exert too much energy. Use sunscreen if you're going to be out for an extended period of time. And if you're going to go out on some of our terraces, find an area where there's shade. Incidentally, we will be having staff over these excessive hot days doing some rounds, walking through the terraces to make sure that our residents are staying safe. So it's rare that we have this kind of heat. It may be something that we continue to have through the summer. So these are great reminders for us as we get through this weekend and for the summer days that are coming ahead. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was events and programs as a little bit of a reminder, but we may not have talked to folks about it, is that if there's a use of photos and videos that are going to be shared externally outside of our community, that we ask folks that are sponsoring those events that if indeed those photos or videos are going to be shared externally, that they put a sign up so that therefore the attendees are aware that photos and videos are being taken that potentially could be used externally. And that if we do post something externally of an individual, that we want to obtain their permission from that individual prior to that happening so that the request is made. And if somebody says simply that they're not comfortable with that, just simply select another individual. And so those are practices that we're using throughout the community to ensure that people are comfortable with their image or photos and videos are being used outside the community. So one of the things that, speaking about safety for the community, is we do apartment environmental safety inspections. And Erica touched on this very briefly last Fireside Chat, but to talk a little bit more of what you can expect is that the environmental services leadership, we have a checklist that they'll be using to go through all of the apartments in the community for the purpose of making sure that it's safe for you and for the greater community. We will be expecting that each inspection in the apartments lasts 5 to 7 minutes. They don't take too long. And if you're not home, we still anticipate doing the inspection on our schedule. And so if we go into an apartment and you're not home, we'll leave a note behind to let you know that we were in there and we did the inspection. However, it's certainly understandable that you may want to be in your apartment when we do these apartment environmental safety inspections. So if that's the case, then contact Pam Smith and in advance so that we can coordinate that, and so that we will contact a time for you that's convenient for both yourself and for Pam and Barbara Smith Barbara Brown to be doing the inspections. And so after we do those inspections, we'll be creating work orders if needed based upon the findings to ensure that those changes and opportunities for improvement and safety enhancements happen. We will not start inspections until after 10 a.m. in the morning. And so just letting you know that we have a schedule that we'll post in other areas as well so that you'll be aware. And certainly changes can occur to the schedule based on other building demands that the EVS leadership may or may not have. But we'll be starting the week of July 12th in the North Tower, and it'll take us some time to go through those apartments. And then we'll start, as shown on the screen, the July 26th for the West Wing. And then finally, we'll wrap up starting in early August, the Central and East Tower. What we'll typically do is at the end of the day, we'll let the reception center team know how far we've got through that tower. Some other safety and security reminders, as I was talking about safety, we talk about security, is that just a reminder that our main entrance, we have 2 doors that are glass doors that open and close, and that exterior door that you need to remember to bring your card key to get through that front door. If you forget your key, there is an intercom there that you can communicate with the staff at the front desk so that they can remotely open the door. But that was something that we installed a couple of years ago as an extra measure of security for us to have that exterior door not just open automatically. And if you do drive, as a reminder, when you pull in or pull out on these doors, that we want you to wait until the doors close behind you before driving away. And then, of course, just be aware of your surroundings as you're coming in and out of all of our exterior doors and entrances. In E-level, as you come through that door, it has an ADA handicap door that it must stay open for a certain amount of time. And so as we come through that door, please wait until that exterior door closes behind you before departing into the community or when you exit. And then finally, one of the things that will be a change coming up as we have done an analysis on ensuring that we have a safe and secure community is that you may or may not be familiar with a term called a box key, which are card keys for your apartment that are at the front desk. And so we will be transitioning to a place where we will no longer have the numerous box keys already what is called encoded at the front desk. And so for that to work for us, I am starting to work with the private caregiver agencies to establish written approval process so that those private caregivers to have access to apartments. And so if you have a private caregiver that is serving you, I will be contacting you, or the private caregiver agency will be contacting you soon to start talking about a written approval process for allowing them, if you want them, to have access to use a key to come in and provide care for you. And then if you forget your key and you need to come down to get a key from the reception center, instead of just grabbing a box key, we'll be having them program or encode a key in the moment when you arrive, which will be a temporary key that you'll then need to return back to the reception center after you gain access to your apartment. So this is a transition we're working on that'll happen over the next several weeks, but it is a change for us, and it does make our community a more safe and secure without having the numerous keys that are at the front desk. And certainly if you have any questions about that, you can let me know. So with that, I am going to turn over, speaking of security, to our own expert in this area on cybersecurity. Brian Levitt is, to have his knowledge to share with us is very valuable. So Brian, take over.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everyone. I want to spend a few minutes today just to talk about some cybersecurity practices we can follow to help just keep our information secure. First thing I want to talk about are some updated password guidelines. An organization called NIST, or the National Institute of Security and Technology, has recently updated their guidelines for how to create and use passwords. That I think is something good for us to see. I also want to talk a little bit about what a password vault is and how they can be helpful. And then finally talk a bit about multi-factor authentication, which is something we're starting to see show up with a lot of banks, a lot of social networks, a lot of retailers are starting to use this technology. Next slide, please. So according to the 2017 Verizon data breach report, 81% of breaches are caused by weak or reused passwords. And what happens is, because of the way the guidelines about passwords are, we tend to make these very complex passwords that are hard to remember. So instead of having a lot of unique ones for our different accounts, we reuse the same one over and over again. So once it gets breached or cracked, it starts to be used everywhere. So the new guidelines are trying to be a bit more user-friendly, and what they've found out is that length beats complexity. So what that means is the longer your password is, the harder it is to crack, even if it's all letters. Even if it doesn't have a special symbol, it's still going to be harder to crack and take a longer time for technology to crack that password than something that is shorter. So the recommendations from NIST for passwords are, I'm sorry if you can go back, a minimum of 8 characters, but really 12 characters provide the best protection. They recommend that you mix an uppercase and a lowercase letter. And if you can put in a symbol, that's great. And then the real guideline is about using passphrases. So rather than trying to make one word, make several words that go together. You can think of maybe a lyric from a song you like, or maybe a phrase from a book, but things that go together that might not be as easy for things to break. So next slide. So they did, so Microsoft did some research, and they've came up with an algorithm that analyzes passwords and their complexity and how long it takes to break. And what they found that just adding characters to a password will increase the time it will take to crack, for a computer to crack a password. So a 7-character password can get cracked in 0.29 milliseconds with today's technology. A 9-character password, just adding 2 characters to that, would add 5 days. A 12-character password would take 2 centuries to crack. So it's a pretty significant impact you can have just by adding a couple characters into your passwords. So if you can aim for those 12-character passwords, your stuff is going to be a bit more secure. Next slide, please. The next thing I wanted to talk about was using a password vault. So one of the key recommendations for passwords is that you don't reuse the same one for every account. You try to have unique ones. Now, we all have a lot of different accounts. So one of the recommendations is to use what's called a password vault. And this is a system that stores your passwords in an encrypted file that only you can unlock because you are the only one that knows the key. It stores all your passwords, so you just have to remember the one password. The vault will remember all of your other passwords. It's accessible on your computer or your smartphone, so wherever you are. And you can also use it to generate passwords, so you don't have to necessarily be all that creative in coming up with passwords. Next slide. A couple of the more popular ones to look for. LastPass is one that is out there that provides a service that is pretty easy to use, and it integrates in with most web browsers, so it will actually fill in passwords for you. There's another one called Dashlane, which is very similar. 1Password is popular. And then the last alternative I have here on the list is called KeePass. And this one is a free one. It's open source. It's an application you just put on your computer, and it does a really nice job organizing and categorizing your passwords for you. What I will do is put some links to those onto HH Connect a bit later, just in case you want to explore those a bit more. The next thing to talk about is the use of multi-factor authentication. This is found to be really one of the most highly effective and best ways to secure your online automation. As I said before, it's very popular now with banks, brokerage, retailers, social networking, healthcare. And basically what happens is it makes sure you have to do two things to be able to access the information, data, computer, or site that you're trying to go to. And you have to have two things to get in. It's either something you know or something you have. So something you know could be your password, something you have could be your phone. So sometimes with Amazon, you'll find that if you're placing an order, you'll log into Amazon, and before you log in, it will send you a text message, and then will ask you to put in a code. On some computers, you can have a fingerprint reader that allows you to log in with a fingerprint. So you're complicating how it takes to get in. And why this is effective, if someone cracks your password and they're sitting somewhere in Russia breaking into your account, they don't have your phone. So they won't be able to put in that second factor there. So it's a fairly simple thing to do that becomes very effective. So if you're looking at a lot of your banks and brokerage or things where you have really secure information and they offer this service, I really encourage you to look at opting into this service. Once you get used to using it, it becomes very second nature and very easy to do. So that's basically my little update on cybersecurity. If you do have questions, feel free to stop by or send me an email. Happy to always talk about it or give you a hand. Next up is going to be Doris and Ray, our Partners in Caring co-chair, to talk about philanthropy updates.
Thank you, Brian, and good morning, everyone. As Partners in Caring co-chair, I am thrilled to see that 71% of our residents have already contributed to our annual campaign, and that over $300,000 has already been received. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your generous support. We are actually only at the midpoint of the campaign, which ends on December 31st. So we're well on our way to our hope for 100% participation. You can see on the slide that there are several ways in which you can make a contribution. Cash, that includes checks and credit card, stock transfers, IRA mandatory distribution, and/or memorial or tribute. We make it easy for you to participate in our Partners in Caring worthy enterprise. If you have questions about how to contribute or just want a cup of coffee, our wonderful staff, Charlene and Ruth Ann in the philanthropy office, will welcome a visit. Our Partners in Caring our Partners in Caring continues to the program by welcoming you to our ice cream social, which this year will occur on Tuesday, July 13th from 1:30 to 3:30 on the B1 Parkview Terrace and Lounge. So we are looking forward to seeing you there. And now my co-partner, Herb Reinelt, will tell you a little bit more about this annual event. Herb?
Thank you, Doris. I just want to go over again the slides that you have seen and that Doris has commented on. Slide 1 introduced Doris and myself. Notice that there was no picture of us because we're the behind the scene residents who are so committed to Partners in Caring that we are co-chairing the drive for a second year. Yeah, and with no pay. Again, take a look at slide 2. We have raised 300,000 out of 375,000. Now that's not bad for the first half of our drive. In fact, it's great work by great givers. And I hope you noticed all those things down at the bottom that Doris talked about. All the ways we offer you to give us your money and feel great about it, because you're helping others as well, perhaps as yourself, while you are here at Horizon House. 71% of the residents have given. Now, if you are part of the 29%, just think how excited you will feel when you join that great number. So don't be shy about giving your money to Partners in Caring. You can't take it with you. Slide 3. Just look at the wonderful philanthropy ladies pictured here. They would love to meet you, help you to donate. Stop at either of their offices on your way to the Monday market because they're right down that hall, about halfway to the Monday market elevator. Slide 4. And we will even sweeten the deal. We'll speak to your sweet tooth, lure you with ice cream, with your desired toppings at the Ice Cream Social, July 13th, from 1:30 to 3:30 on the B level, just outside of our very fashionable salon. And wear pink. It's such a happy color. Giving to Partners in Caring is so much fun. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the illustrious George Counts, who will speak on behalf of the Residents' Council.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. There I am. The Residents' Council report this time consists mainly of a couple of announcements. The first one is to remind you, as well as share my own feelings, that the two most important things that residents do during the year are, one, to sign up for the programs in February and March, and the second is to elect new residents to make up the council. Recall that it's a 15-person council and 5 members rotate off every year. You have probably received your nomination request letters. They were put in your mail slots. If you did not receive one, get in touch with Dick Clark or me, and we'll be glad to provide one to you. Reminder that the new council members are not nominated by the current council itself. Dick Clark is the only council member on the nominating committee. The other members are from your fellow residents. The closing of submission is July 19th, Monday. After that, the potential residents will be interviewed from August to about mid-September. And then on October 19th, at the council meeting, we will present the slate to you, the residents, for your votes. So nominate your friends and colleagues whom you think would be strong members for the council. Make sure you check with them and make sure they agree to have their names put forward. Or think about this as an opportunity for you to serve. Nominate yourself. So let us know if you have any questions or comments on the nomination process. The second thing to mention is our wonderful picnic, which will take place on Wednesday, July 28th, from 5 to 7 p.m. To reinforce Ruth Eller's comments, I would only remind you that the theme is Yellow Brick Road. That certainly touches a chord in all of us from the wonderful movie. You should come in costumes. Feel free to let yourself go and really act it up. You could be a munchkin, you could come as a Tin Man, you could come as the Wicked Witch of the West. But in any case, have fun. You can bring wine, of course, if you like. The string-alongs will perform at around 6 p.m. And at 7, the picnic will end, and after cleanup, we will adjourn to our apartments to watch that wonderful movie, The Wizard of Oz, which will begin at 7:30. The tickets will be available on July 4th. So we hope all of you will respond to this wonderful, happy event. I love The Wizard of Oz. The final comment from the Residence Council is that we will not have a meeting in July. So there will not be a Residence Council meeting in July. Our next meeting will be August 17th. So with that, I would like to turn the stage over to Valerie to hear about new introductions.
Thank you, George. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce the newest residents to our community. First up, Eugene Smith. Eugene was born in Framingham, Massachusetts. He earned his PhD in English from the University of Washington, where he was an associate professor emeritus of English. Eugene enjoys reading and music and looks forward to spending more time with friends who live here at Horizon House. Welcome to Horizon House, Eugene. Tim and Sandy Bergen. Tim was born in Miami Beach, Florida. He earned a degree in civil engineering and is a member of the AJCE. Tim enjoys reading and sports. Sandy was born in Springfield, Missouri, and attended Portland State, Oregon State, and the University of Alaska. She worked as a federal civil servant and in human resources. Sandy is a member of the League of Women Voters, ACLU, and the Key West Garden Club. She enjoys cooking, reading, traveling, and snorkeling. Welcome to Horizon House, Sandy and Tim. Jocelyn Miller, or Joss as she prefers to be called, was born in England. She has earned her BSc, MS, and PhD. Joss was an entomologist and worked as part of the professional staff at the University of Washington. She enjoys gardening, art, theater, travel, cuisine, and reading. Welcome to Horizon House, Joss. Wayne Dodge. Wayne was born in Tacoma, Washington. He earned his BS from Yale, medical degree from the University of Rochester, and Master of Public Health from the University of Washington. Wayne was a family medicine physician and the HIV/AIDS program chief at Group Health Cooperative for the greater Seattle area. He has a lifelong love of science fiction and fantasy. He sang semi-professionally in his youth, but has done little singing in the past couple of decades as he focused on work and family. Welcome to Horizon House, Wayne. And George Von Fuchs. George was born in St. Louis, Missouri. He received an MS in chemical engineering from the University of Washington and worked in engineering and computer support. George considers himself a technical person whose interests include Linux operating systems, computers, and Raspberry Pi. Welcome to Horizon House, George. And the Raspberry Pi is not as in the eating pie. That is a computer term that I did not look up. So that is what that is referencing. And I don't think that Christian and I have thanked you all recently or well enough for all of the referrals. Almost all of these great residents who've been joining us these past few months have almost all come to us by way of referral from residents. So thank you. Next up, Brenda to introduce our new staff members.
Thank you, Valerie, and welcome to all the new residents that have joined our community. We're really excited to have you here. In addition to the new residents, we also have a couple of new hires that joined us this past month. So we have Jasmine, who joined us in dining services as our server, and Tedeschi, who joined us as an elder care assistant in our assisted living department. So we welcome these new hires. If you see them around, feel free to say hi. And that's it for this month. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mike.
Well, it certainly is great to see all those new faces of residents joining Horizon House and to see that activity pick up. And we're just really hoping that that's going to be our trend, both in inviting new residents as well as getting all the activities going that remind us of how life used to be. So we're inching our way towards that and making a little bit of progress, and it'll be fun to see that kind of unfold. A few announcements here at the end of our fireside chat is, we still got to wear our masks in public and, make sure you wear it properly, covering your nose and mouth. I was surprised that, we went so long without any flus or colds, and I just got my most recent cold I think from an airplane, and maybe I didn't wear my mask enough. So note to self, wear the mask, stay safe. We have a grocery van. This is the long-awaited van trip to take residents to the grocery store to kind of engage with shopping. And it starts on the 22nd of June, which was just a couple of days ago. So hopefully we're getting that smoothly kicked off. Sign up with the concierge to make sure you're a part of that trip, and you can begin to get into the grocery store and start to have some of those experiences that you liked before. The shredding bins are here through June 30th. They 3 locations: E level, West Wing, B1 North Tower near the clinic, and then the B level near the Central Tower elevators. This is a great way to get rid of all that junk that you have in file cabinets that you don't need any longer, you don't look at, and they just take up space. So take advantage of this so that you don't have to make a trip to the shredder yourself, but you can just leave it in our bins. Dining service reminder, want to make sure that everybody gets orders placed by 4:30 because we do so much takeout now. We need to make sure that those orders are placed in time so we can get your food prepared and ready for you when you come down to pick it up. Another thing you might notice is that we are nationally, locally, and right here at Horizon House, we are all experiencing supply chain interruptions. And what that means is that during the pandemic, so many things shut down in the preparation of manufacturing of products and food supplies and so on, that when things opened up again, the demand was greater than what the supply chain could support. So we may have situations where we have to change a menu plan kind of last minute, not because we want to confuse anybody, but because maybe the order could not include the delivery of something that was going to go on the menu, that day or that week. My sense is that once we kind of get this pig through the snake and supply chain nationally starts to work smoothly towards, the end of the year and into next year, this will largely go away, but you might see some interruptions along the way. Okay, and let's see. Remember too, we do want to hear of topics and concerns that you want to have us address. So please send your ideas, your topics and reminders and send them off to Laura so we can include them in future fireside chats. And now on for some bright spots. We've had some pretty decent weather and some of our outdoor activities are showing that. A great Memorial Day celebration down on the C&D level decks. We had a great staff grab and go barbecue. We certainly look forward again to being able to get our staff together so we can mill around with our staff and get to know staff better across our departments. But the grab and go is a great way to deal with it in the meantime. And of course, Brian Holtz is always our grill master and he does a great job. We had a good Father's Day celebration, and again, I got to just say kudos to the food service team led by Oliver in doing the displays. I just thought that was so creative. He comes up with such really good ideas, and it makes it look fun. And I hope everyone has a chance to see it and appreciate the work that Oliver does. We had a Pride happy hour too, where people got out and had a chance to acknowledge and celebrate Pride. And this, I think, goes on not for us, but just nationally throughout the month. And it's an important event and one we take seriously here, and glad people that could plug into that. Okay, our next Fireside Chat is going to be on July 30th at 10 a.m. And now I want to make sure we leave a little time for questions if people have them. So if you have typed in your questions in email, Risa or Lacey should have them. And can you tell me if we have any questions?
Thanks, Mike. I do have one question. It's for Brian Levitt.
Okay.
So it says, as far as we know, has Horizon House website, email, etc., ever been hacked?
Great question. We have, I don't know if people remember, several years ago, Sarah McVeigh's email was compromised, and there were some erroneous emails sent from her mailbox that was very quickly discovered and shut down. As far as the website goes, our website's not really an interactive website where people log into it, so it has not really been hacked in any way. That way, it's really just more that it presents static information. So there isn't a lot of opportunity there, and it does run on a platform called WordPress, which is very widely used and also regularly updated and secured. So.
Okay, Risa, any other questions, or Lacey?
No other questions, Mike.
Okay.
No question.
All right. Well, yeah, everyone is welcome to ask questions post Fireside Chat. If there's something that was surfaced during our time today that you want to know some more details on, please get to the person who might have presented and knows the most answers, and we'll gladly answer those and make sure that everyone stays well informed. So thank you all for participating today and for viewing today. And I hope that everyone stays cool in one of what is likely to be just a few days of super hot weather. And then we'll get back and be grousing about the gray skies soon. All right, take care, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.